confirmed. We're preparing the
Yeah.
stream meeting now, and then I will go over to our recording tools and get us started with the opening. And with the opening, I'll count us down from
Opening.
5. And okay, so we are live there. Okay, let me confirm that the microphone is Pro Stereo. And that is Pro Stereo. That's good there. Okay, this meeting is being live streamed. Got it. Okay, now we should be good there. Now let's bring this up. Let's go over to Audacity here. And
Autumn, I'm going to hide myself mute so I don't look at myself. So if you see me doing something weird, you're going to have to say something.
okay, all right, no problem. All right, you ready?
Yes.
All right, we're going to count down to 5. You're going to hear our intro music. I think you should hear that intro music. And then I will give us a brief intro, open it up, and then we'll just take it from there. All right, we're going to start recording in 5, 4, 3. Welcome to the Recovery Lab podcast series. My name is Daniel Anderson. I'm joined here by Autumn Pape. Say hi, Autumn.
Hi.
All right, cool. Thank you guys for joining us. We're going to dump into a little bit of business work here. Just remember, we have our wonderful new website that you can check out. It's recoverylabllc.com. On that website, you can purchase all of our hoodies, which I say it every week. I take a shower personally in my hoodie. That's how much I think that they're wonderful. And I wish that were a joke. I really do. I'm an interesting individual. No, but seriously, we also have a bunch of other things that you can purchase on the Recovery Lab. All of that money goes right back into the podcast and into us being able to normalize recovery with our conversations. And as always, we're unbelievably grateful for everyone that has reached out and supported us up to this point. And today is episode 26. I can't forget about that. We also have Patreon. If you'd like to support us that way, you can have access. I think it's like $5 a month. You can have access to content that nobody else gets access to. We have behind the scenes. We have all sorts of interesting things. And if you just want to hang out and not support us financially, that's okay too, because we are here to normalize recovery. I can't say that enough. We want to make it to where it's completely normal to not drink and use drugs. And that is our goal. So if you want to support us, great. If not, great. It doesn't matter. We're just happy that you're here. And we ask that you can comment on the live stream if you'd like. We love your comments. And just engage. All right, cool. I think also I cannot go without saying, hit record there. We are talking with Recovery for America now. It's a foundation. What they do is they fundraise for funds for people that are in need of long-term treatment to be able to gain access to that long-term treatment if they do not have the funds available right now. They're doing great work. Dr. Drew Pinsky is on their board of advisors. Dr. Drew from Love Lines back in the 90s, or Loveline rather. So if you want to donate to them, you can check them out at Recovery for America now. recoveryforamerica.org. And you can donate there. You can research them and get with them and help them out as well. They're doing really, really great work, and we're excited to join forces with them and try to help them with their awesome cause. So, all right, enough of the business. Without further ado, this young lady has been, every time that I hear her speak in a meeting, my ears poke up. I'm immediately engaged in what she's saying, even though I'm driving the vast majority of the time. And it was just a natural. It was a natural I had to get you on the podcast, and I know very little about you other than what I've heard in meetings, which it's blown my mind how strong, how incredibly strong-willed you are, and how devoted you are to your recovery. So, without further ado, we're going to do a little speak and question type of format today. So, for the first 30 minutes, if you would, just kind of walk us through what sobriety has looked like for you, what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. I know you've been sober for years and years and years and years and years. And this is going to be a great opportunity for folks to listen, sit down, take a seat, listen to what it's like to live in sobriety. So without further ado, Kal Grant, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Hey, 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 good evening. I am Kal Grant. I am an alcoholic and addict in recovery. And all of a sudden I got nervous, and I'm not sure why that is. This is my story, and I'm just going to say it the way I remember it and the way I live it today, right?
Absolutely.
And I want to start by saying I love what you just said about normalizing recovery. I have been sober since March 25th of 1990. So I'm going to save some people some math and calculation. If you start trying to do this, I was 23 when I got sober. And I have been really fortunate to be openly sober, pretty much wide open and sober since I first sat down in a 12-step meeting. My philosophy has been, if I was willing to sit and pretty openly sell drugs from my desk at work as a young accountant, I should probably be willing to be openly sober from my desk as an older accountant and older lawyer. And so I've been really lucky and blessed to be able to be that way and sort of put my stake in the ground that we should be willing to talk about it. So again, sober since March 25th of 1990. And I tend to be long-winded, which I've already made clear to Daniel, and Autumn knows that about me as well. So if I start talking at like the 2-hour mark, you guys start jumping up and down.
No, I sure will not, because I want to hear
Please do.
every last word of what you have to say.
I think that almost every story in AA starts with somebody saying that I grew up in a family where it was weird and I felt like something was missing. And I remember telling that to my daughter when she was in high school and she was first starting to deal with some of the issues that high school kids deal with. And I dragged her to some meetings and I said, listen, every person is going to start their story with, almost every person is going to start their story with, I felt weird. I felt different. I didn't understand.
Right.
So I came from a family, like a lot of people in AA, that was dysfunctional. And some are more dysfunctional than others. And it took me some years to figure out that it was super dysfunctional. And that required a lot of work in sobriety. What I know came from that now was something it talks about in our literature. One of the things that is said, believe in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, is that deep down inside every man, woman, and child is a fundamental belief in a higher power. I can't sit here and say that as a youngster, I knew that there was somehow inside of me a fundamental belief in a higher power, but I sure as hell knew something was missing.
Right.
I just felt like there was something that wasn't triggering, and I looked everywhere. I joined the $6 Million Man fan club. I wrote letters to the president. I joined the Smokey the Bear Junior Forest Rangers. I wrote letters to authors. I joined clubs. At one point, I created a shrine in my room with like a Bible and candles. And I sat and waited for something or someone to show up and say, I get it. I get you. I'm here to help you. You are not alone.
Right.
You are not alone, because I felt so, so, so terribly alone. And as though I just couldn't figure out what the point was. And so it's not very surprising at age 15 or 16 when somebody handed me my first drink that I, slugged it down, reached for another and thought, oh, there it is, right? There is the thing that I'm going to be able to do that's going to make me not feel alone. I can find some friends. I can buy some friends. By the way, sharing your drugs is a great way to make friends. I can get, I heard this in a song once, I can have evenings full of half an hour friendships till the cows come home. But at 15 or 16, I just knew that I had found the thing that was going to make my life bearable. And I've heard people say the first step by saying, I was powerless over alcohol and my life was unbearable. And life was unbearable until alcohol saved my life, because I was suicidal already as a teenager, and alcohol kept me from killing myself. And I lived a
Served
very
its purpose.
classic, yeah, it saved me. And I got down to college, went as far away from home as I could get. Already a blackout alcoholic, already somebody who woke up in the middle of the night with, vomit beside me, already somebody that wasn't sure what happened the night before. Already somebody who could be at a dinner party with, the first real drunk, like 12 people at a big dinner party, and somebody saying, oh my God, she's going to blow, and dragging me out into the front yard, throwing up, making them look for my contact lenses in the grass, discovering they're in my eyes, waking out, passed out in a bed, still in those clothes, and truly wanting to do it again. So I came down to college. I went to SMU in the 80s. That's probably all you kind of need to say there. Ecstasy was legal. And I think, just importantly for my story, I was a full ride scholarship kid in a school full of what felt like really wealthy people who had figured out how to live life. And I didn't. And I didn't know how, and I couldn't figure it out. And so I drank. And I did a lot of drugs, and I drank some more, and I filled the hole in me with anything that I could find, because I just needed that friend. And alcohol and cocaine and ecstasy and anything else I could get my hand on, those were my best friends. They never let me down. They showed up for me when I rolled over in the morning and couldn't remember what happened the night before. They were still there, and I found the people that would do it with me, right? The only problem with finding the people that would do it with me, and of course, college is filled with lots of glamorous and not so glamorous stories, and lots of not glamorous stories, and moments that I still cringe when I drive around Dallas. At one point in college, on a night, we actually broke into the Autumn Pape factory and climbed up and sat on top of the water tower. And you can still drive by that factory.
Oh my God.
So, glamorous stories and not so glamorous stories, and nights where I sat in my dorm room with a razor blade against my wrist, wanting to be brave enough to do it. Ignoring friends when they called me because their boyfriends were pounding on the door, threatening to come in and kill them. And I was too busy doing my party, And what happens with that kind of life, where I'm slogging through water knee deep all the time, and really the only person I have time for is me, and the only thing I'm living for is the next moment of release, the next time my brain can kind of exhale a little bit, the next time drugs and alcohol help my give a shitter stop giving a shit. I hope I can say that here.
You can say whatever the fuck you want.
Yeah, is the thank you, is the quality of friends that I had started to steeply decline by the end of my, by the time I was a year out of college.
Right.
I'd be at a party at 2 a.m. and looking around at these people thinking, oh, what the fuck? These are not people I would hang with, in real life.
Exactly. Yeah.
The sun's coming up. I need to get home.
Yeah. Now
And
that you
all
can see
the
people, it's
it's like, oh my, whoa,
Yeah.
hello, and doing the walk of shame back to the apartment, and hoping nobody calls you that you just met. But I really liked them in the moment, at midnight, and by 3 a.m, I'm thinking, yeah, I don't think so. I'm hoping they didn't follow me home and know where I live. And I'm standing alone in my apartment looking out of the blinds in the village in Dallas, watching cars go by, hoping that somebody stops by, because I am so, so, so lonely.
Right.
And so afraid someone will stop, and there's a chance they're going to see what's really happening inside of me. And I probably could have kept going a while like that until I got brave enough to do it, to go the last step. And I did have a suicide attempt in December of 1990. I downed about 60 Valium, and Autumn has heard this story. I downed about 60 Valium, and I had a moment. I had a God moment. I had a real deep God says it's not time yet moment. And I decided to tell a friend goodbye. And that's what I told myself I was doing. I wouldn't admit I was asking for help. He was a reservations agent with American Airlines. And I like to joke in meetings for the young people back in the old days, you had to call a 1-800 number to make reservations. And he didn't have a direct line. He was a reservations agent at a 1-800 number. And I called that number and said I needed to talk to my friend David to say goodbye. And the reservations agents of American Airlines tracked that guy down and got a hold of him and got him on the phone. And he sent the police to my apartment to get me and take me to get my stomach pumped.
Holy shit.
I mean, talk about a miracle of all the people working for American Airlines. And about 3 months after that, there was a young woman who went to my home group of Alcoholics Anonymous. And she was in the pink cloud of early sobriety, where everybody needs to get sober.
Right.
And most people she did know probably needed to get sober. And she decided that I needed to get sober. And so we were going to do an intervention. They were going to do an intervention. And in another one of those weird, amazing, recovery related moments, she decided she needed to get a hold of my brother, who had gotten sober at 18. And lived up in Minnesota. And back then, kids, we didn't have the internet again. So she had to try to find him in a phone book. And my family at the time didn't believe in being listed. So she started calling AA groups in St. Paul, Minnesota, looking for a guy named Scott who had a sister named Kal who lived in Dallas because she was in trouble and she needed help. And it took the good people of St. Paul 24 hours again.
Wow.
To find him and get him in touch with her and arrange for my intervention. And so the family came in and they swept me off to the intervention. And as I say every time I tell this story, when the people you are selling drugs to arrange for your intervention, you have a problem. So it was my family and a number of my good customers and a couple of friends who arranged for my intervention. And I smoked about a half a pack of menthol cigarettes, and everybody went around and took a turn about what they wanted or what they felt, and they kept saying I was going to get a turn, which by the way I did not. And my dad started crying and said, I just want a chance to start over. And he and I had had a rocky relationship. And he said, I've made so many mistakes, I just want to start over. And it was that small window that opened for me. And I wear his wedding ring every day, along with an AA ring. And one of the reasons I wear that is it reminds me of that moment when he said that, and the window had opened for me. And so I agreed to go to a 10-day program, which doesn't exist.
Right.
And I went off to a 10-day for 10 days to a treatment center, at the end of which, while I was there, I heard a couple of stories, and there were a couple of stories that made sense. There were a couple of my almost yets, my not quite there, but it could have been me's. And so at the end of 10 days, I walked out and went to my first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. And stayed. I did not start working the program right away. I stayed by virtue of sheer white knuckled willfulness.
Right.
I mean, I was hanging on to that chip and hanging on to my chair and smoking a pack of Marlboro Light 100s. God, I miss smoking a pack of Marlboro Light 100s, and sitting in smoky meetings to prove I didn't have to drink, and saying whatever I thought people wanted to hear. And after about 2 months of being so horribly alone, but not being able to use alcohol or drugs, after 2 months of my way just is not fucking working. I finally had that moment, and I had a stupid fight with a roommate about something stupid. And I had the moment of clarity that it doesn't have to be this way. Because I knew my way wasn't fucking working for a long
Right.
time. But what I didn't know was it doesn't have to be this way for me. I knew maybe it didn't have to be this way for you, but I didn't understand that it doesn't have to be this way for me. And I tell sponsees sometimes the first 3 steps are my way isn't fucking working. You know, these people seem to have a better plan. And the third step is I think I'll give it a shot.
Right.
You know, and so I got down on my knees in a Blockbuster bathroom in my little khakis. Blockbuster, for the young people, was a video rental
Blockbuster.
store.
Yes.
All
Oh, my
right. That
first
was
and
my
favorite
second
job.
job. Yeah, I was working 2 full-time jobs to, afford my habits along with my outside entrepreneurial activities.
Sure, of course. Of course.
I got down in a Blockbuster bathroom in my khakis and asked God for help. And that really was the moment where I got sober. I was dry, and I used my dry date as my sobriety date, but I didn't
Really.
accept that there was another way for me. And really what that was hope, right? I mean, that's really what it was. I let hope in for the first time. I believed that my life could be better, could actually be better.
So how long were you, how long after not having any substances in your system until you actually reached that that relief that you're speaking of at the
Oh
block?
my God, I am a stubborn woman. It was 2 months. It was
2
2 full
months.
months.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
2 full months. I mean, I went to meetings. I went to 2 meetings a day. I showed up. I was white knuckling it. I kept going to meetings because it was the only place I felt safe.
Right.
White knuckling it through for an hour at a time. I knew I was doing the right thing and I was in the right place. And I was not as alone. So I would sit in my chair and spout something, something, something. But at that point in life, I felt so desperate and so lost. And here was a group of people that said, the next right thing for you to do is go to a meeting. And I really think that was the start of me understanding that the most important thing I could do, and I still think one of the most important things I can do, is go to meetings. And in 32 years and 10 months of sobriety, there's been fewer than 10 times that I've gone more than a week without a meeting. I show up and I sit down, and I do my best to sit down all the way. And for me to sit down all the way means I got to show up real to the best of my ability. I got to show up and tell you what's really going on. And it took me 8 years to learn that. I know exactly how long it took me because it was 1998 and I was going through a divorce. You know, those first few years of sobriety are that everything starts going right, right? I mean, you take the drugs and the alcohol, you stop selling drugs. Take the alcohol out of the picture, you kind of get your life going. And in the beginning, all the stuff kind of falls away, right? I mean, a lot of the big problems kind of fall away. You meet some kind of weird but nice people to hang out with. And everything, I got a scholarship to law school. I went off to law school. I met a boy. He was also sober. We get married. We're working at the 2 biggest firms in the city we're living in. And we buy the house of our dreams. I mean, it might as well have had a white picket fence, right? And we're rocking along. And then the cracks start showing up. We had infertility. I had a miscarriage. He turned off the TV in the middle of the night one night and said, I don't want to be married.
Oh.
And piece at a time, all that stuff that I thought meant that God and I, all that stuff that I thought meant, well, clearly I'm working a good program. Clearly I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. I mean, God is shining the light, like prosperity and, cash and prizes.
Right.
as our friend Russell B likes to say, cash and prizes. And it fell away fast and hard. And I discovered that my faith was based on the fact that everything was going my way. And in 1998, I was sitting on the steps of my house, which I was about to sell because I had to move out. My dream house that I thought was going to be my house forever with my kids and my husband. And I was screaming at God, this isn't right. You cannot do this to me. You cannot do this to me. And I was ready to go upstairs and lay down and be done. I really was. But two things happened. One, I looked down at my dogs and I thought, who's going to find my dogs? And then somewhere in the back of my head, my mother said, you better clean the house first, you know? And I looked over at the kitchen counter and my eyes fell on my address book, and it was sitting on the kitchen counter. You know, because back in the day, kids, we had paper address books. And I, for real, I opened up my address book and I turned to the letter A and I started calling people.
Right.
And I called people and I called B and I called C and I called D and I cried and I cried and I said, help me. It took 8 years in this program for me to pick up a phone and say, fucking help me.
Right.
Because I can't live right now. I'm coming out of my skin. I don't know how to do this. Everything's not going my way anymore. And I went to a meeting and for the first time, sat in the back of the meeting and cried and cried and cried and cried. And there's nothing quite as fun as going through a divorce when your husband is also in the program.
Huh.
But I reached out for help. And when the day came to move out of my house, I was swarmed with people. People showed up and packed my shit. I had a girlfriend who stood in my dining room and packed my crystal for 2 days. It took me 3 years to discover she'd done it. The guys that worked in the copy room of my law firm knocked on my office door and said, we heard you're in trouble. Can we help you? And these kids who made copies for the law firm showed up and packed boxes.
Wow.
And they packed me up and carried me. And that's where I really started to figure out that for me, what my higher power promises me is not that shit's going to go my way. Not that there's some great big plan where nothing happens by mistake. Not that there's this, the next right thing is some magical next step. What God has promised me is that when life gets lifey, when shit hits the fan, because it's life, that I am not going to be alone. That kid that was sitting in my house growing up, you know, making shrines and writing to presidents and celebrities and anybody I could think of to ask for help, that kid, you know, was finally able to sit down and no, I'm not alone. And what God promises me is that when life is lifey, I will have people. And for me, I will have laughter, because that's just a big part of who I am that also came from my dad. And that when I ask for help, it will be there. And of course, asking for help, like I think every sober person, it's a journey. You know, it's been a long road of learning how to ask for help, and accept help and say I'm not okay. And I have to learn it regularly as I've gone through. But that's how I know exactly when I reached that point, because it took the depths of that loss of losing a baby and losing a house and losing a husband to figure out what my faith needed to be based on, you know. And so I packed up my toys and moved home to Dallas, you know, back and you know, and started to live my life. And I discovered that I needed women. That's also when I discovered I needed a really core group of women. I needed people that I could carry and that could carry me and that would surround and keep me safe, and take care of me, and that I could be part of the group. We're talking a lot in meetings about first steps lately and the first tradition, and what it means to be part of a group. And I've had a really long journey of knowing what it means to be right-sized and knowing what it means to not dominate or be dependent on other people. And in 6 and 7 and the 12 and 12, one of our Alcoholics Anonymous books is our 12 and 12 book that takes you through the 12 steps and the 12 traditions. In step 6 and 7, it specifically talks about the character defects that we have that are messing with our relationships with other people. What 6 and 7 for me are the work that I do so I quit hurting myself by fucking up my relationships. How do I keep getting in there and dragging my habits and biases and ego into a place where I hurt other people and I hurt me? And one of the places that I do that, or one of the ways that I do that, is I either dominate, which love to do, like a lot of people in my profession, but also just because I'm an alcoholic, dominate or be dependent, one of the two. And I had to learn how to be part of a group of sober, mature, most of the time, people, friends, where we just showed up and nobody was more important than anybody else.
Right.
When I was back in Dallas and attending my group, I went on a date with somebody from my group and I was sexually assaulted on the date by that person, by that man. And you know what I did? I opened up my address book and I started calling the women. And I started at A and I started at B and then I called C and I cried and I said, I can't live in my own skin. What am I supposed to do? And because I had done the work of learning how to be part of a group, because I had tried to figure out how to be part of something bigger, I had a group of girlfriends who, showed up and surrounded me and kept me safe and told me it was going to be okay. And I refused to give up my own group, even though he was there. And I just let them sort of create a cushion around me of safety, so that I could keep going there, because I was like, fuck you, I am not giving up this group.
Right.
You know what? I did sort of give him the evil eye when we got to 4-step and 9-step sometimes.
Jesus.
And then when and those were the same women that were with me when I adopted my daughter. I was 10 or 11 years sober when I adopted my daughter. And there were 12 people at the hospital with me to pick her up. She was a 2-day-old infant. And they came, we had a wedding the night before. One of them got married. And the next day we all went to the hospital. And, I was told my friends were too loud. I said, that's what we do. And I was in the nursery, waiting, like they're giving you instructions on how much to feed the baby and all this. And they're banging on the window, give her the baby, give her the baby, give her the baby. And we went back to the house and they sat me in a chair and filled me up with love and, sort of drove away and left me there with my AA baby. And she went to her first meeting when she was 10 days old.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, I figured it, I raised an AA baby to the best of my ability, and she's on her journey right now. But I hope I have done for her the same thing that was done for me by a brother who got sober to 18. Shout out to my brother who's got, I think, 42 years now.
Wow.
When he got sober to 18, what he showed me was that AA is full of regular people who pull together to support each other. And I could see that through whatever small window of clarity I had. I was 14 and he was 18 when he got sober. But what I hope I have done for my kid and for other people that I meet along the way now is I give them a glimpse into the fact that, just like I love what you said at the beginning, Alcoholics Anonymous is full of regular people who are doing their best to stay sober and help others to recover from alcoholism. That's our primary purpose. And being an AA has given me what I needed when I was looking for that shrine. I was building that shrine and I was writing those letters and I was clinging on, dependent on people and things and trying to figure out how to not be alone and how to fill the, what I now understand, it was to find that deep down inside fundamental belief, you know, that now I have a primary purpose. And, you know, before I came down to this job I had down here, we were in one of the last interviews where we were talking to each other about whether or not I was going to take the job. And, you know, that question always comes, is there anything that's not on your resume? I've interviewed people. I use that question too. Right. And I said, so here's the thing. And this is a couple of years ago. I said, here's the thing. I'm 30 years sober. And AA is always going to be first. And I'm going to get calls at weird times. And I'm going to take the call and you're going to grit your teeth and be mad. And I'm going to run out the door for a meeting because frankly, you're going to be driving me crazy and I need to be with my people. And so it's my primary purpose. You're not going to be my primary purpose. There's going to be a higher power in AA and family, and you guys are going to be down here somewhere. And so I don't want you to be surprised or, you know, you didn't tell me before I came here because it's just part of who I am. And you know, I am far from a poster child for AA, but I have stayed sober, you know, and I have fucking gone to meetings. Keep showing up, keep sitting down. And in 2018, I went through a really, really dark time with the job I had at the time. And I went through a really dark time because the job sucked and because I had let myself get caught up in the prestige of the job and the shit I could buy and the shininess of it all. And I went to my one meeting a week and I kind of shared and I said stuff I said that I always say that I say, you know, and I went home. And I, you know, the next week I showed up and I sank deeper and deeper and deeper down until the thought would come in the back of my head not to take a drink, but that maybe, you know, my child would be better off without me. And I woke up one day with that God moment of clarity, that window in the back of my head that said, you need to get your ass back to a meeting. And I went back to a meeting and I sat in the back at a 6 o'clock meeting in my home group and cried. And I went back the next night and I went back the next night and I went back the next night and I sat there. And when people were sharing, and I heard you talk about this before, Daniel, and I've said the same thing as well. When people are sharing, I try to sit up and look them in the eye and really listen. For this ADHD kid, for me, sitting in a meeting, paying attention when somebody's talking is a form of meditation. It's sometimes the best I can do. At meditation, it is often the best I can do. So I went back to my home group and I went every day. And after a couple of weeks, I was walking out of the meeting, you know, fragile, but there. And this woman chased me out of the meeting into the parking lot and across the street. And she said, will you be my, I have to have a sponsor. Will you be my sponsor? Will you be my sponsor? And I looked up like, okay, I understand. I don't think this picture could be any clearer what I'm supposed to be doing right now. And, you know, one of the many graces of AA is that AA says we're still here. When you're ready to come back in and sit all the way down the fucking chair, we are here. We're here waiting. And you open right back up and we're going to act like you never left. And you can fill your soul up again. And not be alone. And let us love you. And that group again saved my life. And I just dove back in. I dove back into meeting every day, and sponsoring people. And, you know, moving the chairs back after a speaker night and actually hanging around talking to people, not running out because I'm so important and I have a big job. Instead of running out the door for that, I stayed around to talk to people. And I got a sponsee not too long after that first one, when at the end of a 6 o'clock meeting, somebody dragged a woman over to me that had come in still drunk and said she needs a sponsor. I told her to talk to Cal. Here you go. And we sat out front of the group and talked, and I needed it.
Right.
I needed every one of those sponsors. And Zoom hit, and here we are. Right. And I thought, I guess that's, now that I've chatted for 40 minutes.
Good. You're good.
One of the things that I was so mad when COVID hit for so many reasons, primarily, as you can probably tell, I'm an extrovert.
No.
Through and through on the Myers-Briggs test, I am a perfect extrovert. But I was supposed to have my 30th sobriety birthday in March of 2020, the last Sunday of March. And I had worked myself for this. It's my 30th birthday. I am big shit, right? I am big shit. Birthday night. And 2 weeks before birthday night, COVID hits.
Right.
And you just sort of, what are you gonna do? I looked up and I was like, are you kidding me? Right. And somewhere that window opens up after I say it out loud in a meeting about 10 times, somewhere the window opens up and I realize, okay, maybe it's not all about my birthday. Maybe. But I moved down here and to San Antonio, and COVID let me stay with my home group. COVID let me check in 2-3 times a day, and to see the people that I loved. Well, I found people here to hang out with. I got to stay in touch and keep my feet planted where I got sober. My home group is the same home group I've had since I got sober. And they know me. And in my first few weeks of sobriety, well, let's be real, after that 2-month point, and when I came in, there's somebody that still goes to Preston that helped me move out of my drunk apartment with my drunk roommates and into a sober apartment. He showed up at 6:30 in the morning to help me move, and he still comes to Preston, and I still see him. His name's Hank, and every time I see him, I remember who I was when I needed help moving out of my drunk apartment.
Right.
And I didn't want to lose the group, and COVID took away my big 30th birthday hoo-ha, but gave me a way to keep in touch with the people that sustain me.
Right.
And remember me, and don't let me pretend I had a high bottom drunk, because I didn't have DWIs. I didn't get arrested. I didn't bounce checks. But make no mistake, stomach pumped, pulled out my own IV to catch a cab. I was not a high bottom. I was a suicidal mess.
Right.
That didn't have a lot of consequence, but I was slogging through water knee deep, and I cannot forget that. And I don't ever want to get so far away from my group or the people that remember me or my memories of what it's like that I forget that.
Right.
Yeah. And that's my daughter behind me yelling at the cat. So outside my door.
That's awesome. What an incredible story. I just there were numerous times in your story where you mentioned how women in the program showed up, where they showed up. Will you help? And it's the same with men. Don't get me wrong. There's, men show up for each other all the time, and it's a beautiful thing. But for the female listener that's listening right now, or that will listen to this down the line on the via podcast, if you would, because you and Autumn are both like very outgoing individuals.
Mm-hmm.
You both seem to me as somebody who, individuals who will be there, will show up. If you would, Autumn, would you please talk a little bit about what that looks like, what that relationship that you gain in AA, in the 12-step program rather, what that looks like for you guys personally, coming from a female's perspective?
Absolutely.
How important is that camaraderie, that fellowship that you find within the 12 steps?
It is extremely important. And I was fortunate that I actually came into the program with friends. And I remember my first sponsor telling me, you need to make friends. And I was like, I already have friends.
Right.
And she was like, you need to make female friends, you need to make girlfriends, and they need to be sober. And I was like, whatever. And so she tricked me. She tricked me into making friends because she would drag me along with her to all these events that she did. And sure enough, I looked up and I was like, holy shit, I have girlfriends. And I will say, Cal helped me out and is still helping me out in a situation that I'm going through, a personal situation. And I remember when my sponsor was she was out of pocket for a little bit. And so I kind of used Cal as like a pseudo sponsor. And there was one day where I was like, I know I should go to work, but I really, really want to go to a meeting. And we went back and forth, and she was like, go to the meeting. And, I just want to say thank you publicly to her for that, because it's just, walking into Preston, or, anybody walking into a home group, just seeing people, that human connection is so important. And I'm actually very, I'm a homebody. I love to stay home. But after about 5 days or so, exactly. After 5 days or so, I was like coming out of my skin. And so I was texting with Cal. She was like, go to the meeting. And after that meeting, I told her, I was like, thank you. That is absolutely what I needed. And, I love Cal very much. And the thing, from your story, there's a couple things that I've taken away. Is one, we still have fun. I love that story.
Exactly.
I love that story. You talk about picking up Izzy and how you guys are being too loud. Leave it to be unruly and loud and obnoxious, bring the baby, give her the baby, you would think, and I guess in a sense we kind of are insane. But when we do get into recovery, it's like that insanity turns into something good. It's like a celebration. And I love how you talked about, you picked up the phone. By the way, I do know what a phone book is, an actor. I love that, that you do that you did that, because that's what this program is about. It's about fellowship. It's about, we are there for each other. Cal's been there for me many, many times when I've been like, I hate this program, I hate my life. And it's like, no, it's just amazing at what our higher powers can do. And it's amazing at what our higher powers can show us why we're here, why Cal didn't off herself, because then she couldn't carry this message of hope. And, I love the story too, how you told, that big fancy law firm that, sobriety is my number one priority. When I heard you say that, I was like, holy shit, that woman has balls. Like that.
But it is.
But it is amazing. And I'm like, wow, because it is important. It is very important. I don't know if I could do that. But, when I heard that, it was like I got chills. I was like, that right there is what I want. I want that. And, I'm just so honored to have such a sweet and loving friend as Cal. So I love you.
Love you.
It's so beautiful. It is like, and I'm 38 now. My first meeting when I was when I was 18. So I've been, at this for a little while. And this is the first time that I've really sat down. You mentioned it so many times in your meeting, the importance of sitting down. And I never really understood. First of all, also I'm adopted. So the fact that you adopted just makes me love you even more. But the fact that I was finally, I tried every other route. I tried to just do, smoke a little bit of weed, do a little this, just do that, like the book talks about. And I was completely unsuccessful, and I was miserable. And it wasn't until, like you said, I sat down fully in recovery. And what does that look like? For me, that looks like getting involved. showing up, getting to meetings early, making coffee. We don't clean out ashtrays anymore, but from what I heard, that was a thing we did back in the past,
Mhm.
back in the day. But just getting involved and making yourself available to help someone else. And it's a common theme throughout your entire story
Mhm.
is you sat down, and it was when you sat down that you realized and came into this wonderful gift of being comfortable in your own skin. And it's just that for anyone listening, it's so incredibly important that you come in and you sit down fully. You
Yeah.
just sit down, and you continue to come back. And that's another thing that you said. You
Come back.
stressed it. You come back, even when you had some awful shit happen with somebody in your home group. That wasn't enough to break that bond, which to me, where else does that exist in this world? Right? Where else does that kind of bond with other people exist? It just doesn't exist anywhere else. I mean,
It's to your point though, Daniel, I think the question you asked earlier about women friends and women friends and finding that companionship, what works in sitting down and finding that companionship is in AA, we find out we don't have to be shiny. We find out we don't have to look like we have our shit together. We sit down and we talk about our struggles and we talk about what's really going on and
Right.
what I'm unhappy about and how I got my feelings hurt. And that's the other way of fully sitting down is saying, I'm not perfect. I don't have it figured out. Here's kind of what I think, but I reserve the right tomorrow to change my mind and tell you
Right.
something different. And I didn't know how to have female friends until I figured out how to not be shiny and
Mhm. So
not
important.
not
Oh
feel
my
like I
God.
gotta look like I got it together because I don't have it together. I'm trying. And my other campaign along with for better or worse, along with normalizing addiction, is even out amongst the English, as they said back in Harrison Ford's movie Witness, out amongst the English, is just talk about it. From the early days of my pantyhose ran today, um, which was a moment in early sobriety where the woman that I looked up to like most in the firm was in the bathroom and she's making weird noises and you're trying not to, and then she says she ran her pantyhose and I'm thinking, oh my God, that happens to me. To sitting in a meeting talking about my fears and my failures and finding out that that's what the bond is. And to your point about all of us wanting everyone else to be successful, we're all pulling together.
Right.
And I don't know where else you find an organization. We joke about it all the time, right? Where everybody wants everyone else to be successful.
Right.
I mean, right? You come in and you say, I'm fucked up, and everyone cheers for you. I mean, really, what?
Oh my!
Score! But
It's
Well, it
true.
makes it, it makes
yeah,
us feel not alone. And just
right
that,
there you go. And we're not alone. And because you're willing to say, oh, I felt that too, I am suddenly less alone.
Right.
all that guilt and shit.
Just like that.
Yeah. And
Mhm.
Daniel, you mentioned you're adopted. I'm adopted
Yes.
too.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, I
Now,
remember
Score.
that.
Val talking about
Mm.
her adopting a daughter,
Yeah.
I'm just like, oh, and that warms my heart. And her daughter is a different race. I was raised by white people.
Yeah.
My
Yeah.
last name, Poppy, hello, that's not Asian at all. I'm the only Asian in my immediate family.
Right.
Everybody else is white.
Yeah.
Cal's daughter is black, and it's so cool that, I always felt like I'm alone. Everyone's staring at me. Everyone's pointing and laughing and making fun of me.
Right.
And, hearing that, Cal adopted a daughter. I was
Mhm.
like, really? She did?
Yeah.
This
It's
this is
yeah.
when I was doing the program, and I was like, that's really cool. Hearing that you are, it's like,
Yeah.
oh wow. And it's okay where we can be vulnerable, where we're not going to be made fun of,
Mhm.
Right.
where it's going to be like, you too,
Yeah.
it's just, I mean, this is an amazing program, and I don't know where else, it's like we're all on the same team. We all want everybody to win. And it's funny, you may not even like me, right? But I know that if I called anyone in the group even if they didn't like me personally,
They would show
and I
up.
needed help, that they would show up.
They would
pull my
show up.
shoulders. You know, and that's the cool thing about this program is that we're all in this together.
And I learned, so Autumn talks about and talked in meetings about what it felt like to grow up adopted of a different race. And fortunately or unfortunately, I have other friends who've gone through that. The willingness for other people to talk about gave me the opportunity to sit in a meeting and find out how somebody else felt about it. You know, and when I got to this program, I couldn't name a fucking feeling, right? I mean, a couple of months in, I discovered I was angry. But after some number of years or even less time sitting in meetings and listening to other people name their feelings, I could sort of start to suddenly kind of figure out how I felt. And then you guys taught me, okay, here's how you feel. Maybe that's how I feel. Or maybe I just need to know that's how I make someone else feel. Right. Like just learning how to navigate and listening to what Autumn went through gave me that understanding on how I treat people and then how my daughter may feel as well. But it all starts with us sitting all the way down in a chair and not being shiny.
Right.
And not acting like everything's okay. And I love the fact that when we go, and I need these kind of rules, like I went to a meeting, I get my little 3 minutes, usually more than I share. And that's my turn.
Right.
And then everybody else gets a turn. And I had to learn how to let everybody have a chance to speak, you know, and not talk about what they just said. And so I had to sit there and learn how to be human. And then be okay with being human, and then actually feel pretty good about it and want to help someone else get to the place where they feel okay about it too, and they know they're not alone. What they feel isn't different, what they dream about isn't different, what they fear isn't different. All the stuff running around in their head doesn't make them terminally unique, it just makes them human. And we have the gift of desperation, which we talk about as well, right? Where I got to figure that out. You know, I would have just offed myself without, but for being, because I was there before I ever took a drink, right? But for the need for this program, I found out I wasn't different, just another person. Chattier, I interrupt more. Full of opinions, but really okay with just being another person and having a good time while I'm doing it without half an hour friendships.
Yeah, exactly. It's so beautiful. I mean, the fact that we have a place to go when we don't feel the best. Like for me, you know, the vast majority of days in sobriety are relatively happy, if not tipping the scales of being really, really good, right? But everyone has bad days. We all have bad days. But what's different is because I hit that wall and had that gift of desperation and didn't have any other options. I was able to sit down and now I have a place where I can go and, you know, my pride and ego may, you know, make me try to appear as though there's nothing going on or I'm not having a hard time or whatever. But if I strip that away, and I'm able to do that in a meeting, and when I strip that away and I can just be present with other people that have been where I'm at, there's just a wonderful sense of relief that comes over me. And I've never left a meeting where I felt worse than when I first got there, you know, and it's such a beautiful thing. We could go on and I don't want to take too much of you guys' time. And I just want to say again, thank you so much, Kal and Autumn, for joining me and doing this with me. Autumn, I know I reached out last minute and you stepped in and
Go Autumn.
and
And I'm
you
like, what? Excited.
fucking killed it. And and unbelievably grateful to you for doing that. And Cal, thank you so much for coming on. All right, we're going to end with the with our intro music, and if y'all will just stick around for just a second. And thank you everyone for listening. Again, let's see, what am I forgetting? Am I forgetting anything? I don't think I'm forgetting anything. Okay. Thank you everyone for listening. And this is Recovery Lab. Have a great night. All right, cool.
I do have a deep and abiding weakness for like 80s Euro trash music. I got to say that's a hangover from the 80s.
Thank you. I cannot thank you guys enough. I don't want to take up any more of your time, but you guys are awesome. Autumn, thank you so much. And,
Autumn,
we'll, I've
You
my
got
need-
pal Autumn.
yeah, I've got,
My pal.
She's my cat tutor.
I've got an out of town meeting tomorrow morning. I mean, out of town job tomorrow. So I'll probably see y'all at Preston Group tomorrow morning. So, all right. Love you,
Woo!
girls.
Thanks for
Thank you
asking
so
me,
much.
Daniel. I really
Absolutely.
appreciate it. It
Thank you
always
for doing
helps
it.
me.
You guys rock. Thank you guys.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye.
Later.
Bye.